Alrighty, let's see. There we go. I'm assuming we are live right now. That's the way YouTubers are now. Like you just could start recording in your live. So I'll wait a minute. Any guys that are getting in here and want to join before we have too much fun. But for anyone else, hope you guys had a great weekend. It wasn't the last weekend, was the long weekend. I basically had a long weekend. That's why I was thinking it was a long weekend, but no, that was President last weekend. So I hope you guys all had a great weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Even though Sunday's the weekend, right? And then I hope you guys are all going to have a great week this week as well. Sorry, I'm just turning my audio down a little bit. It seems a little loud. Anyways, let's see. Anything else I want to talk about first before we get into it? No. I don't think so. I mean, I wanted to do a video and a little bit something more interested and involved for today, but I picked up another project over the weekend that's really going to be eating up a lot of my time, it seems, over the next few weeks. I'm not going to have a whole lot of free time. So I thought, really, I just needed to take a break. So I thought I would take a break and basically talk with you guys about some stuff that I think is kind of interesting that I don't really feel the need to, not the need, but I don't feel like I have to do a big, long research segment to do a video on this. Some pretty basic stuff. But yeah, so anyways, you guys are here. Glad to have you. But anyways, let's get into it. So today, God, it's the 22nd of February. You're going to be writing threes for dates pretty soon, which means we're getting close to a quarter of the way through the year, which means it's almost 2022. Anyway, that aside, this came out. I guess let me show you guys where this article was posted on. It's actually posted on the Microsoft news.microsoft.com, which is hilarious to me. I'm fairly certain the M in MSNBC literally stands for Microsoft. I'm pretty sure. Like Microsoft owns MSNBC and started it. So anyway, we'll leave that for but this came out, and I thought this was a very, very interesting. You call it an article? It's a press release, right? Like it's Microsoft posting on their own website something Microsoft did. It's a press release. Which, again, makes it even more hilarious. I think, honestly, the fact that this is a press release more or less kind of sums up my point on it. But we'll go through this a little bit. We'll read through this a little bit and see what we're talking about. So anyways, Adobe, ARM, BBC, Intel, and TruePic are forming a coalition to develop end-to-end open standard for tracing the origin and evolution of digital content. So what the hell does that mean? Well, let's figure out what it means. A group of influential technology and media companies has partnered to form the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, a joint development foundation project established to address the prevalence of disinformation, misinformation, and online content through developing technical standards for certifying the source and history or provenance of media content. Founding members Adobe, ARM, BBC, Intel, Microsoft, and TruePic seek to establish a standardized provenance solution with the goal of combating misleading content. Honestly, just going off that first paragraph, I can probably tell you guys right there, basically. I'll sum up my feelings on this more or less pretty quick. Honestly, it's really great framing. More or less, from my perspective, the way the whole fight for disinformation and misinformation is framed, it's framed perfect here. It's basically people that want to be able to post whatever crazy nonsense they want to post on the internet on one side, and Adobe, ARM, BBC, Intel, Microsoft, TruePic, and influential technology and media companies on the other. That really is the fight here. Some people agree with the international media companies. I have to be honest. I guess I get it. I don't get it that much. But think about it. I mean, like, why is Adobe concerned about misinformation and disinformation? Right? And then we're going to get to my favorite of these. Now, Microsoft, actually, they reveal a bit here. I was going to say Microsoft's an American company, but, I mean, I don't know. I wonder how American they really feel. Not to disrespect them, but just people use computers all over the world. Like it's not like anything Microsoft offers is like uniquely American products, right? People buy Microsoft computers. I'm pretty sure in India, I don't know about China, like India, Australia, Antarctica, right? Like they're used all over the place. Like people use Microsoft products, so I get them. But let's take a little detour, I guess. But I want to take a look at something that's kind of fascinating, which is the BBC. As an American, I'll be honest, I didn't know very much about the BBC at all for a very long time. But over the years being on the internet and kind of picking up on some memes and stuff, you don't know about the BBC. So we're just going to go through very quickly just the Wikipedia article for BBC. I'm not like a big, you know what I think is funny? There was this brief period of time where there was like, I don't know if they're like boomers, even like older millennials, just people that didn't have Wikipedia available to them when they were in school. And I would see like serious like people, like adults when I was a kid, right? Like citing Wikipedia when they're posting stuff. And I'm like, hold on a minute, dude. My 11th grade history professor or history teacher, and they're like high school teachers won't let me cite Wikipedia, but you people are citing Wikipedia like it means anything. What the hell is this? But over the years, Wikipedia has become a little bit more boring and standardized. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, the BBC is a public service broadcaster headquartered at Broadcasting House in Westminster, London. It's the world's oldest national broadcaster and the largest broadcaster in the world by number of employees, employing over 22,000 staff in total, of whom more than 16,000 are in public sector broadcasting. The BBC is established under a royal charter and operates under its agreement with the Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media, and Sport. It is funded principally by an annual television license, which is charged to all British households, companies, and organizations using any type of equipment to record live television broadcasts and iPlayer catch-up. The fee is set by the British government and agreed by Parliament and used to fund the BBC's radio, TV, and online services covering the nations and regions of the United Kingdom. Blah, blah, blah. Now, that's really that's the big thing I want to put on. So as an American, I think a lot of Americans, there's non-British people, don't realize what the BBC actually is. It's just, it's you can almost look at it a little bit like imagine if PBS was like the biggest network and the most well-funded network in America, right? Like that's. It's actually kind of funny, and I'm not from England, I'm not going to get into it, but you'll notice like older English people, not even that older, just people that were watched television in the United Kingdom like 30, 40 years ago, they'll refer to like channel like 5, and like there was, I'm assuming, not very many channels, and there are a lot of them working for the British government. Anyways, though, so why is the British state media, which every single British resident is compelled to pay for under punishment of law? I think they have provisions. I think they've been fighting for them. I don't know if they actually have them. They were going to come up with provisions that would say that, like, maybe old people on fixed incomes that just happen to have a television in their house shouldn't be compelled to pay their licensing fee. Right? If you ever hear the joke, the British television licenses, that's where it comes from. But anyway, the reason I want to highlight and touch on that is, again, just who are the people that are very interested and so interested they're putting money into this stuff every single time, right? It never seems to be regular citizens. Like, there's the people that just kind of agree with what the companies and media does. They think it's good. I guess they kind of fancy themselves, what's his name? The Patrick Dempsey in the Transformer film, right? But it's interesting that it's like time and time again, whenever these things are really put together, it's like state governments and the biggest media and like digital companies in the world. It's always them. They're always very, very, very concerned in this. Like, think of all the very important stuff in the world people do fight for and do want. For example, there's a big push to get, like, let's say, inappropriate videos of minors removed from the internet. You'll notice these companies don't really partner that much to do that, right? Removing abuse of children on the internet on Twitter. The BBC, Adobe, Intel, they're not going to partner for that. Why would they? But for some reason, because think about it. Dude, what does Intel or Microsoft care about disinformation? Again, dude, people have Microsoft computers running on Intel hardware in, I'm sure, India, I'm sure England, I'm sure, like, I'm just naming continents. You're probably almost in every continent, right? But for some reason, misinformation, which don't get me wrong, is something that impacts the whole world. But, I mean, really, I would say it's mostly privileged Westerners that sit around and bitch about it all day. Why are they teaming up together to put this? So, that in and of itself, right, it's not really like the biggest deal here, but it gets me thinking. So what is misinformation, right? I guess that's kind of the point I want to get into here, because they mention all kinds of weird flowery language that gets me real suspicious anyways, right? They mention what was the one? Content provenance, which, by the way, I love. Content provenance sounds good, right? What does it mean? So I got an article I pulled up here from, I believe it's Politico. It is Politico. Democrats question TV carrier's decision to host Fox, OAN, and Newsmax, citing misinformation. Again, the reason why I use it, keeps coming up. Misinformation. Now, you'll notice media companies are on the receiving end of this one, coming from Democrats. I'm assuming, lawmakers, because, I don't think they mean Democrat voters, right? Like, why would there are articles about that? But so 2 House Democrats pressed a mix of cable, satellite, and streaming providers on Monday about the decision to carry Fox News, One American News, OAN, and Newsmax, accusing the right-leaning outlets of serving as misinformation rumor mills and conspiracy theory hotbeds that produce content that leads to real harm. And I guess we can get into that. I mean, if you guys don't know a lot about them, like, they are basically just like the boomer MAGA news networks, right? Like, anyway, like if you watch MSNBC and CNN and you kind of roll your eyes, they're like, oh, wow, this is just kind of like some hack nonsense. It's the exact same style of content just for Republicans, right? For like, Republicans love it, but like regular people watch it and go like, oh, so just kind of like hack partisan nonsense. But there's really a big, I don't know. What's the word I'm looking for in this one? There's always this big cross-section, right? It's always, again, it's the state trying to get regular people to stop talking. I think it's the quote I wanted to read. Okay. Right-wing media outlets like Newsmax, One American News, and Fox News all aired misinformation about the November 2020 elections. These same networks have also been key vectors of spreading misinformation related to the pandemic, which you could probably argue is true, right? I don't think that's that crazy of something to say. I mean, well, let me find the exact word he used for this. Let me see if I agree. Misinformation. I would agree with that. Misinformation is a good word. Misinformation is defined by... Oh, whoops. Here's the tab. It's defined by... I think this is the Oxford definition I'm using right here. Oxford. False or inaccurate information, especially that which is deliberately intended to deceive. Interesting word there, though, is especially. Not exclusively. It's not always false or inaccurate information. I mean, it's not always intended to deceive. It's just false or inaccurate. False or inaccurate. I mean, I guess you don't have to get into like the nitty gritty of it, but it's also, I mean, there was a period of time where, I guess you could say maybe for some people, but there's a period of time where saying that the universe didn't revolve around Earth was misinformation, right? Like, I mean, if you replace heresy with misinformation and just go through history, yeah, a lot of misinformation has been spread, man, by all kinds of folks. All kinds of heretical information has been spread by all kinds of folks. The only problem is, like, the heresy has to exist as a mirror to put things up to. Does that make sense? If there's only the narrative, because by the way, like, if we do eliminate this concept of mis or disinformation, we're creating the narrative. There is the truth. There is just the facts. There is, and it's going to create basically like real life canon. You know what I mean? Like, there will be things that literally happened, or literally didn't happen, that will work their way into the narrative. There will be misinformation that just sneaks through, right? Because, I mean, seriously, like, Intel, Adobe, AMD, whoever, they can put all their big brains together. They're not going to prevent this concept of people being wrong. They're not going to get, especially things where there isn't a right, really, right? Like, if people are debating theoretical ideas, so maybe that would exist, but that does seem to fall into disinformation a lot as well, right? For example, I mean, say what you want about like the weird QAnon stuff, but a lot of it's pretty, I mean, some of it you literally can't prove, man. Like, how can you prove to me that there isn't, like, alien ghost spirits possessing people or whatever? How could you prove that? It doesn't make any sense. However, if we fool ourselves into thinking we did, no. If anything makes it to, and I want to see what makes it past, I want to make sure I get the name of this thing correctly, right? If anything makes it past the C2PA, must be legit. Must not be disinformation. It must not be misinformation. Which, again, it's arrogant and foolish to assume that somehow we did it. Somehow we got rid of it. So all it does is create circumstances with which you start to believe things that aren't real because you're under the belief that things that aren't real don't get reported as real, which is just foolish. It's nonsense. But it's this arrogant, again, it's the kind of thing that only giant billionaire corporations ever try to push for. Just arrogant, I'm going to transcend humanity and the flaws of man and perfect the sharing of information. I'm going to eliminate, again, this is the Oxford definition. I'm not just pulling some of misinformation. It's false or inaccurate information. Especially like for example, you can call something just false or just inaccurate. When you might step it up to misinformation would be when you believe it was deliberately intended to deceive. But even like just go through what these words mean. It just makes no sense, man. I mean, how do you remove wrong information that probably was intended to deceive? Because how about this? What if they're just good enough at deceiving you? It works. You fall for it. Like, by the way, I want you all to think of the misinformation we've all fell for over the years. Every single person. I got this thing behind me. Any of you guys ever fall for the Santa Claus misinformation? Anyone fall for that? The Santa disinfo? Yeah, the Santa truthers out there get to you when you were young and explain to you this stuff. I mean, there's so many things out there that are like you can be tricked. Again, Santa's a bit of a joke, but I mean, people can be fooled and people can be tricked. I mean, this concept we're going to eliminate misinformation it's one of the most foolish things to me ever. No, you're not. You can't. You can't get rid of people being wrong, especially when they're trying to be wrong on purpose and kind of couch it and dance it around in a way where you might believe it. And again, I don't want to get too far into the specifics of exactly what this branch is doing, because it's just one of many. I mean, like, this idea that like there's a big push against misinformation, disinformation, isn't new. I mean, by the way, the elites have been trying to control what the people beneath them could say and think forever. Like, there's nothing new to this concept. It's actually a concept we fought to get rid of. We decided we don't want people rooting out misinformation, aside from like wartime and stuff, but we don't want that because it can't be done. They'll fail. I mean, here's the other thing, and this is more my personal opinion and theory than fact or anything like this, but governments and government officials, kind of by necessity, are very arrogant, right? They assume that like they're putting forward the way we're talking about arrogance, that they're going to set up councils to get rid of people being misinformation, which again is people being inaccurate. They're going to get rid of that. Talking about arrogance. No, you're not. That's impossible. It's literally impossible to get rid of. Especially because what if people, again, the concept of being wrong, people kind of sometimes, actually, we almost exclusively start off at the wrong position and then over time get more information until we can kind of suss out what the right position is. But for example, most of us are raised with the wrong position on Santa Claus. Most of us think there is a Santa Claus. Not all, but most of us are misled to believe that. And then we realize over time, no, there isn't. We believed it, and it wasn't. But you think about this. I mean, for example, we're talking about misinformation in the United States of America. Hey, dude, I would have loved it if there was legitimate institutional pushback from the very top about, like, the Iraq War. Because, dude, I was a little kid. I mean, little kid. 9/11 happened when I was 9 years old, right? So the Iraq War was like me being like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I mean, we're still in Afghanistan, but you see my point. I was younger. I didn't know any better, man. I was watching the news. I actually was watching a lot of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, even that kind of stuff. I remember just being like, oh, okay. I mean, the Twin Towers did blow up, and I guess they have nukes or whatever, I was a little kid. I just believed it. Now, what's concerning is as time's gone on and we've learned what we learned about the Iraq War and the weapons of mass destruction and Saddam Hussein and all that stuff. We learned what we learned. We learned that people were misled, were lied to, fed misinformation. However, if you'll notice, for me, again, I was a little kid at the time. Like, what the hell do I know, man? A lot of people who weren't little kids at the time seem to have been under the same impression I was. Because, by the way, this idea of, like, rooting out misinformation and disinformation, that was theoretically the media, right? Like theoretically, when the government would put out their misinfo or disinfo, it would be the media's job to push back against it. And then theoretically, when, I guess, just private corporations, the media and private companies putting out their misinformation and disinformation, in theory, it'd be up to the government to put a stop to it. For example, like companies selling water with poison in it because it makes them money, and just lying and saying there's no poison in it. It's misinformation. They're saying we're selling you clean water, intending to deceive, right? And theoretically, we have the government step in there, right? Now, we don't believe that there just isn't, we don't believe that somehow it's all being cut off, and I think that's what we've learned over the last few decades. Is like, you know what? The media doesn't always call the government out in their bullshit, because sometimes they're also deceived. And the government doesn't always call out private corporations. They're bullshit because they are sometimes either deceived or log jammed up. But because we know that, for example, because like how many people out there will hear a news report and be like, what the? And then you read who reported it and it makes a lot more sense all of a sudden. Like, oh, okay. I didn't think that was actually real. You know what I mean? But it's like, I mean, you can just take your pick, right? If it's like you read some article about like the communists taking over America, and it's like, oh, it's by like Breitbart. And it's like, okay, it's kind of their content, right? And then you read, like white supremacists have enslaved every American. You're like, what? And it's the root. And it's like, okay, it's kind of their content, right? And you just like what helps people navigate these misinformation, disinformation, is just understanding the different perspectives and where they come from, and then kind of holding these mirrors up to the information they receive. And like, well, hold on a minute. This sounds like exactly what you would say, and no one else is saying it. And we can kind of use it that way. But if we let ourselves go down this road where we believe we got rid of the misinformation, so we're only hearing truth, oh my God, man, we're destined to be fools forever. I mean, that's like step one to making someone your fool, is convince them they know better. If you convince someone they know better than to be tricked by you can trick them forever. Because from their perspective, impossible. I can't be tricked. I'm too smart. They don't even notice what's going on in front of them. So imagine that from our perspective, from Americans' perspective. Citizens. We believe them. Honestly, dude, even if you don't believe these people, what the hell are you going to do? You know what I mean? Like, seriously, if you don't believe the government, you don't believe the mainstream media at all, it's like, well, I mean, like, you're not in the rooms and you're not calling the people doing this stuff, so how the hell do you got to take someone's word for it? And I think most people, even if they do have a healthy distrust, kind of do just take the government and media's word for things. However, we also understand that there's a lot of words out there. And while, yes, the downside is some people might choose to accept lies over truth when they have the option. To be frank, man, there's this understanding that it's like there's this conscious decision people make, that it's not like subconscious. It has nothing to do with like fears and doubts and other preconceived notions about the world. Like, it literally just comes from them being like, here's truth, here's lies, I will believe lies for no reason. Nah, man, there's generally things that they don't even put into words that lead them to believing something. You know what I mean? Like, what's like some of like you can like pull like the generic ones, right? Where it's like someone's like someone like sleeps around, never gets married, they don't believe in love because like their parents got divorced. Like that would be like the simplest thing. But like, people tend to look at the world a certain way based on their past experiences. That doesn't change. So, I don't know. Again, this was kind of just a little impromptu thing. I just wanted to pull up really quickly to go through some of the stuff we saw. But it really concerns me because it just feels, that's the one, I don't want to say the one evil, but that's the one the one ill that just keeps happening. Just keeps coming up, man. As soon as we convince ourselves that we do know more, we do know better, as soon as we convince ourselves that, oh, no, dude, you don't understand. Like, the media said it, and we already got rid of the misinformation people. There's no misinfo left. It's all gone. Well, then you'll just believe anything. Because and again, it just stems from the one belief. Just the one belief that there is this council, whatever council, it's a government arm, whatever it is. There's someone out there preventing misinformation from reaching me. If you believe that, I mean, dude, like that. I mean, you're talking about misinformation leading to some issues when people go along with it. It's a lot more dangerous when you don't have weird fringe weirdo groups to point at, and the misinformation becomes the canonized narrative law of the land. That's how you get any government that's able to commit mass atrocities. It's generally because they've pushed misinformation on people and there was no mechanism to push back, and people just kind of go along with it and believe it because they're like, well, the government says it. And generally how it happens is that there's this sense that the government tells the truth and then the government just lies when you give them that power. But we're under the impression they tell the truth. They have a council and everything. There's the truth and realities are. How could they lie to us? Just be real careful about these same people who always want to control all information. Control who could say what when, who gets to hear what when. Just be careful of them, because it's never people that I believe have any good intentions for me at all. That's why this really stuck out to me. Adobe ARM BBC, dude. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine the BBC? So literally the British Crown coming over to not Australia, not New Zealand, not Canada, not the Commonwealth. Not even like India and South Africa. Like, I don't know if they're considered the Commonwealth anymore, but like former, not even that. I'm talking about like even America's former colony. Like going into countries they have no business being in, or not going into, but preventing information from those countries getting out, because then being like, no, that's misinfo. It's like, well, but wait a minute, British government and American computer company. What do you mean that's disinfo? Because here's something else. You might notice something else about these companies. I don't think any of those companies are based in India. Maybe I gotta be honest. ARM and TruePic, I'm not 1,000%. I'm pretty sure, right? India is one of the biggest countries in the world. I mean, at their growth rate, people project that India will pretty soon be like one of the, developed, moving into a place like China and other bigger countries in the world are. People actually say because of where India is located, they might actually, not only because of where they're located, but because of some of the ties they've made with other regions. Also, China's very interested in, screwing around in Africa and pulling resources out of Africa. Well, dude, India's got a lot. I mean, for example, God, what was it? There's a country in, I think, Central Africa. I'm blanking on the name. It's not the Congo, I don't think. But like they recently came out, it's like 85% of their tax dollars come from Asian, but like largely Indian immigrants who live in the country and work and own a lot of the stuff. But anyways, what happens if foreign countries are lying about India in the press and the media and they want to get the truth out? But these foreign countries that happen to be lying about this country, well, hold on. That's not the truth. No, you don't understand. This foreign country is feeding you misinformation, disinformation. Now, right now in America, you can literally read Russia Today. My favorite is Al Jazeera. So it's like literally just the Qatar state media. Like I think like the Qatari propaganda minister is literally the person who runs. And that's why I love when you see stuff. You ever see any content from AJ Plus? That's Al Jazeera Plus. It's Al Jazeera Teen basically. And it's like, why is literal government propaganda from Qatar, which is like mostly, I think like half of the population of Qatar is literally slaves or like servants or whatever, right? I mean, sorry, my only point is, it's always going to be dressed up and it's always going to be phrased like this. Oh man, these evil psychos want to put a bunch of lies in your head and make you commit atrocities. And in order to stop that, we have to curb their ability to say things, right? I mean, anybody can say, call them heretics, call them Satanists, call them whatever you want. We've called them everything over the thousands of years humans have existed. We've called the misinformation people. We've called them everything, man. However, that's not actually what's gonna like realistically, dude, if like a couple, like for example, if MSNBC and OAN close for spreading misinformation, which by the way, I wonder why Microsoft wants to get in on the ground floor and this whole controlling misinformation. I wonder why Microsoft and the BBC want to get in on the ground floor of this whole controlling misinformation thing, right? Any reasons? Anything comes to mind about why those companies might want to control some of this stuff? Also, how about this? You notice one company on here, Intel, right? I'm not noticing another company, though. That's AMD. And again, this is getting a little bit more into the weeds, but what if Intel and their buddies over at the C2PA decide that some of this stuff that's being published, and let's say it's not being published in MSNBC or one of the Microsoft-owned media outlets, but let's say some digital media outlet that's independent is publishing claims from AMD about how their new software, their new hardware is going to be able to speed up, I don't know, stuff they do at hospitals and save lives. And if that if we can get this off the ground, we're going to save lives, something like that. And what if, I don't know, AMD, or what if Intel and, Microsoft decide that's misinformation? No, it's impossible. And what if that's the reasoning? AMD has to be lying about this new technology they've claimed they've invented. It's impossible. Trust us, we know. Intel can't even create this technology. So AMD must be lying. It must be misinformation. If the government allows AMD to trick them with misinformation into taking on this contract for these new computer chips or whatever, I mean, we can't allow it. Like, lives will be literally people will die because the federal government will buy machines that we know can't possibly exist. Right? And then, I don't know, maybe Intel comes up with their own 6 months later, and all of a sudden, that misinformation to claim, the heretical claims this technology could even exist will be Intel press releases published on MSNBC. Again, that's kind of in the weeds of it, but it's also just along the lines of like, it's very, very, very concerning what happens when people really start moving along with the whole, we're going to control misinfo, because you can't. Especially, like, you can't stop people from lying, man. Now, if you want a better way of going after people who knowingly publish lies, okay, but that's different. That isn't controlling the spread of misinformation. I mean, we have laws already for people who knowingly spread lies. Those already exist. Interesting question. Hectic Energy, $5 super chat. Thank you with I believe it's the Jackrabbit picture. He said, who should own the printing presses or the modern equivalents? I mean, like it's... First of all, who should? Doesn't matter who should. Who could is the only thing that matters, right? Who actually could do that? And I'm telling you right now, who could do it? Giant, influential technological and media companies partnering together. They could do it, right? Because I don't know, I'm a little cynical. I'm a bit cynical about this in life, but I don't care about the coulds, man. Don't care about the shoulds. Shoulds don't matter. Waste of energy, waste of time, waste of breath, waste of everything. Talk about the shoulds. Because seriously, it doesn't matter who should be in control of this stuff. I tell you who can do it. The U.S. government, Adobe, ARM, BBC, Intel, or the United Kingdom, America, and these giant companies. They could do it for sure, dude. They could definitely control this. They can definitely be the person in charge of all this stuff. Now, want to get to the shoulds? Probably not, no. But they will. And they're doing it. And it's why misinformation's protected us as long as it has. I mean, like, when you're exposed to QAnon and you go look up QAnon, and it's literally just all of the right-wing fringe conspiracy blogs writing a lot of the same right-wing fringe conspiracy content that existed for years and just kind of pretending it's the same thing now, it's a lot easier to just be like, oh yeah, it's that. It's a lot harder when you're under the impression, like, what if something that's not literally QAnon, but what if some crazy theory makes it past the misinfo watchdogs? Which happens all the time, by the way. When we don't have this idea that it's possible that, like, maybe the stuff they're telling is false and they're lies, there's no protections. It just happens. You just believe it. And then what's really concerning is to kind of bring it back to reality a little bit here. I mean, you just look at the current state of America, man, and I don't know, man. What if these government companies decide to start saying stuff? I mean, not government, but seriously, like, what if things start getting listed as misinformation that start leading us down some really bad ways, right? And it's already happening, to be honest, right? But and again, again, this is my fundamental beliefs here. This is just how I think things seem to work. But I think human beings generally, we take a few small concepts and then we kind of ignore the fact that we've accepted these premises as true. And we just kind of go on with our life. But we don't realize how they kind of start to spread and influence our other thoughts, our other actions. Because if you were to, it's kind of the idea that the sum is greater than the parts. If you believe A, believe B, and believe C, well, then what comes out on the other end? And I don't know. I think the more lies, the more BS, the more nonsense out there in the world, honestly makes everyone stronger and better. As soon as we attempt, and here's the other thing: the government's never gonna come out to us and be like, "Hey guys, remember our misinformation filters." They're only like 85% accurate. Like, some of the stuff we tell you that makes it into the unimpeachable official narrative of fact, like 15% of that is stuff they're going to just pound the table and insist. And then you know what that leads to? That leads to the state and the largest influential technology and media companies adamantly defending lies because they have to. Because if they don't, they have to admit that they can't stop misinfo. That's really it. Defend lies or admit you can't stop disinfo. It's one or the other. Dig in and just swear up and down that something that slipped past your sensors, slipped past your big brains, made it into the the narrative of fact. But they never do, man. They'll never admit, you know what? Sorry, guys, that one's wrong. Think about the whole weapons of mass destruction in Iraq thing. Have we ever got an apology for that? We're literally still in the wars that stemmed from that whole thing, right? We still have boots on the ground in countries as a result of those lies. Not the same countries, but I mean, actually, we probably we gotta have like a base or two in Iraq. We do have bases in Iraq, I believe. They keep getting hit from Iran. Like what is this? But again, you'll notice how we accepted that one simple concept 20 years ago as Americans, that Saddam Hussein needs to be stopped. There's weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. America needs to go. We accepted that concept, and look at what's come as a result of it. We're still in these countries. Just today, there was a bombing, I think at a base in Baghdad. I think it was Baghdad. Just today. Now, I'm not saying if America left, there'd be no more bombings in the world. But I'm saying it's like, we as Americans accepted a BS misinformation lie 20 years ago, but because it came from the people we believed didn't feed us misinformation, we don't get misinformation from the New York Times and the U.S. government. Because we believe that, we have people are dying every day, but like on a weekly to monthly basis, people are dying in the world as a direct result of us just going along with the BS weapons of mass destruction Iraq war lie. And it just keeps going. And, are Americans going to come together and really sit down and, take a deep look in the mirror and be like, you know what? We all did tacitly sign off and approve this over and over again by just re-electing people who do it over and over again. We don't care. We approve of it more or less. There's no real anti-war movement in America. And again, anti-war isn't even the good way of forming it. There's no pro-accountability movement in America. There's no movement to hold our leaders accountable. So they aren't. Now, the people that are already above accountability, unimpeachable, really, I guess you could say literally, right? These people that are unimpeachable, now they're asking for us to allow the biggest influential technology and media corporations in the world to partner with them more or less, because I'm sure they're going to, there's no way they can't partner with the U.S. government on this, to control the misinfo, to make sure we don't get to see the lies. They keep the lies away from us. Which, again, isn't of itself the biggest lie ever. Like the fact that misinformation can be controlled is in and of itself misinformation. That's the irony, right? This idea that like somehow these companies are going to come together and they're going to they're going to address the prevalence of disinformation, misinformation, and online content fraud by developing technical standards for certifying. Dude, there's a great, this is a kind of a small part of the bigger picture, right? But art forgeries happen. People buy, experts swear up and down that this is not misinformation. This is not disinformation. This is an authentic piece of artwork. And people find out later it was fake the whole time. There's a lot of fake. Like, people have been faking artwork for forever, and experts have been falling for it for forever. But there's a lot of things like that. I mean, like, I don't know. It's just this idea, and it's not new. Human beings keep thinking we can do it, man. We keep thinking this time we're going to do it. But seriously, dude, we're punishing heretics again. Like, where does this get us? And the worst thing, too. I mean, there's these really arrogant, modern, like, pseudo-intellectual types that love to refer to the Middle Ages as, like, the Dark Ages, this era when humanity, which is so much of it's hilarious to me. When you take 10 seconds to look at anything that happened over this periods of time, it's like, what? It doesn't make any sense, man. We had a dark ages. Like what? I'm sorry that we weren't creating machines to have 9-year-olds crawl under so we could make cheaper boots, but like there wasn't like this. It wasn't like humanity froze. However, one thing that was kind of prevalent, and not exactly just in the Middle East, but further down the line, right? Like down throughout history, right? But you think about it, like it is true that if a country is spending an inordinate amount of its time trying to root out heretics or counter-revolutionaries or communists, whatever they're trying to root out, some weird boogeyman thing, yeah, like that's a dark age. That's just stagnation. Like we're turning the finite energy of a nation in on itself in a destructive manner. It doesn't help. It doesn't work. And we're in the middle of it, man. We're in the middle of a bit of a It's not literally what you would call a brain drain. You don't see people leaving. But, dude, I have to imagine, like, there's a lot of people that... I saw a funny post, I think it was Brett Weinstein post, someone post. But still, like, there was people in 2003, 4, 5, and 6 saying, hey, guys... By the way, these people were spreading disinformation, by the way. They were saying, hey, guys, the economy is about to crash. None of this is tenable. This housing market's baloney. People are getting loans that can't pay them. Eventually, someone's going to be left holding the bag. This is untenable. They were heretics. They were misinformation peddlers. They're peddling disinfo. They're fear mongers. Now, years later, we found out they were right. But they would have been persecuted as misinformation agents today very strictly. For example, and I'm not going to get into the science of this, but I remember very, very early on in the coronavirus pandemic, there was a gigantic push to get as many ventilators as humanly possible made because they were going to help. And then as time went on, we realized more and more, like, actually, I think I'm not an expert, but I've read like multiple pieces where they're just kind of like, over time, they realized that there was other ways to go about it that kind of gave better results. And like, really, if someone has to go on a ventilator, there's nothing else that can be done. Like, that was kind of like the end of the road anyway. So like this idea that like making all these ventilators is going to save lives. I think a lot of like hospitals and stuff realized if we can keep people from ever needing to go on one, we're saving lives, right? That's what, and then they came up with therapies and treatments. And a lot of it was stuff that already existed, but you know, it's that as soon as it happens, everyone's hitting the ground running, just trying to think of something. However, we had people on the press putting out misinfo and disinfo about these ventilators. How many we had, how many we didn't have, where they were coming from, how they worked, how they didn't work. Now, were any of them like, for example, there was this, and I think the reason why I like to use coronavirus as a way to kind of highlight this is, like, I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't think I'm allowed to, but there was a lot of disinformation and misinformation that evolved to kind of being a lot less disinfo and misinfo and a lot more, oh yeah, that's actually what's going on here. Because yeah, dude, like, we didn't know everything immediately about this. It took us time to figure out. There's people at first that were like, we need as many ventilators as can possibly be built. We've got to just jam people on these things. And then over time, we're like, actually, maybe not. That's not going to help us as much. We actually would be better off to expand our access to other things because these treatments actually do get people home safely faster and more consistently. Now, does that mean people that legitimately thought ventilators were the thing we needed more of and the way to help, who are pushing those, we're morally wrong? Again, we're disinfo, we're bad. No. I'm sure a lot of them just legitimately believed, no, we need this to help people. This is literally going to save lives. Again, they just turned out to be wrong. And again, it wasn't even like wrong in the sense of like they didn't do their homework. Wrong in the sense that, like, over time, our kind of thinking on the thing evolved a bit, and we got more experience as a nation. And I would say I'm speaking a little bit, you know, broad term, but I mean, like as the hospitals, the medical reporters, the medical, like, all these people, like, they figured out more stuff as time went on. The people that were putting people on the ventilators saw what happened, and we're like, you know what? If we don't gotta do this, let's try not to, because this is where I'm going a little bit on the, not conjecture, but like, I believe the way I read it and the way it was that early on we saw people were having problems breathing, so we were putting them on ventilators because it's like that'll help them breathe. But then I believe with specifically coronavirus, people struggling with breathing, a lot of it was coming from their not carrying enough oxygen through their blood, so just jamming the lungs open and closed wasn't helping anyway. That might not be 1,000% true, but just like we definitely learned over time other treatments. I think also the reason why it's good to use medical stuff, because we do learn over time new things about it. Diseases show us things. It's one of the scary things, right? It's like we don't actually know. And I'll put this: diseases mutate, right? Like what could be literal malicious lies about, you know, about a virus in July might be the truth in August. And when you've demonized that fact as absolute misinfo, disinfo, you can, when, you know, again, if a virus literally just mutates to now share that property, you have to go to people and say, remember that thing we told you was 1,000% made up bullshit lies that like only evil people believed in? Well, now it's true. They're not going to do that, and they'll probably actually just turn away from life-saving, methods to preserve their own save face, man. Because I think that's one thing too. A lot of people don't understand who aren't like, and I'm not a leader in leadership position, but like I am really interested. I read a lot of autobiographies and journals and a lot of biographies of people that were considered great leaders and because I think it's interesting. Right? Like I think part of it comes from the fact we clearly have no leaders now, so I'm like desperate to find out what leaders actually look like. So if one does come around, I'll be able to recognize them. You know what I mean? And yeah, dude, like a huge thing about leadership and being in charge is like, you have to save face. Like you have to make sure you maintain a certain level of credibility. For example, there's this, I think it's a bit of like apocryphal kind of a joke, but there's this idea that British military officers would never duck. When they were in combat, when they were in battle, when the bullets were flying and the bombs, the officers would never duck. They'd always stand straight, be brave, face ahead on. Idea being, even if you're scared shitless and want to duck, the fact that you aren't ducking might motivate men to be brave as well, right? Same leadership in anything, right? Like even if you feel one way or even if you know something to be true, sometimes in order to lead effectively, you have to kind of pretend it's not. You have to kind of delude yourself a little bit and try to delude others as well. Convince people, no, this is the way to go. Which again gets back to the original concept of why it's important to have the media checking disinformation and misinformation and lies, having people call it out, point it out, and discuss it is very good and needs to exist. However, the lies and the misinfo and disinfo kind of have to also exist as well so we can do that. Because here's the thing, dude. When there's a bunch of misinformation out there and you can actually go through and prove it wrong, then it makes the truth kind of stand above. It's like not only is the truth not immediately get taken apart by, just proof for other things. It has things to be compared to. So yeah, I mean that's the gist of it. I mean, again, this was kind of a little off the kind of impromptu stream on just kind of a concept like that. I'm gonna come with some more put together, more stuff. I'm still working on my video I want to do with you guys for progressive theories on prosecuting criminals, I guess is a good way of framing it. Because that's definitely, there's some interesting concepts in there that I do not agree with. And actually, seriously, is one of the things that did lead to me finally getting pushed out of Los Angeles is the electing of a progressive prosecutor who was bringing in all of the stuff that concerned me right off the... Sorry. Yeah, I just didn't want to. And I once I saw that, I'm like, I gotta get out of here, man. It's a bargain. It's a bargain with the devil that I just cannot stand. Party to. It's not good, man. Not good stuff. I'll get to a question. Someone asked, where was it? Let's get your name right. Joseph Carroll. So, do you think that the U.S. could split into different areas? No. Because someone tried that. And this is actually something I thought was really interesting, right? Someone brought this point up. Why didn't the North just let the South secede if they wanted to have, why did the North fight so hard to live in the same country as racist slave owners? Right? Why didn't they just say, fine, to hell with you. We're bigger than you. We're richer than you. We have more money than you. We're going to invade you. And I guess in a way we did. We invaded them, conquered them, and destroyed them. But why do we call it a civil war then? Why do we talk about how... I mean, because, again, from the perspective of the people that considered themselves to live in the Confederate States, which were not the United States, what union was retained? Because realistically, it was a threat to power. Realistically, it's like, even if, and again, this is how a lot of wars get fought, is a lot of the times, for example, the North got real lucky. that the South, in a way, kind of was the bad guys in this one. So it was easy for them to justify being like, hey, look, we've been trying to get rid of slavery in this country for a while anyway. I mean, like, the abolitionist movement wasn't as, it grew over time, but abolitionist movement existed in America. I mean, keep in mind, slavery was outlawed in England, like 100 years earlier, like 70 years earlier, something like there was people who were aware of this concept of getting rid of slavery before the Civil War was fought. Like, why didn't they just say, fine, to hell with those evil slave owners? We don't want them in our country anyway. I don't know. It seems like a kind of logical position, but because realistically, if you start setting this precedent that if people don't like the country, they can just leave and make their own, it's a big threat to your overall power, right? I mean, seriously, imagine if New York was just like, hey, you know what? We do all like the finances. We're just going to be our own country now. We're going to be a city-state, which is, by the way, especially you want to talk about like the 1800s. I mean, like, it wasn't that long ago that city-states dominated the Mediterranean. Like, that's not like a crazy outlandish concept that New York just becomes its own, or New York City becomes its own mini country, right? That maybe San Francisco at that time would have just been like, hey, we're just going to make our own little country. I mean, San Francisco, as time went on, maybe you would have seen San Francisco in the West as they started expanding further west. Maybe if, there was already a precedent that the South was able to secede and make the Confederate States, why don't people on the West Coast secede? What's the point of the West Coast being part of, because at a certain point, right, if the North and the South have separated, you have the Union and then the Confederacy, to be kind of a little bit reductive in terms, right? Why would anybody else in the gigantic United States feel any obligation to be a part of either of those countries, right? Why would California and Oregon feel like they need to be part of either the Union or the Confederacy when they're basically just two countries on the other side of the continent? And that's a concept that has not ceased existing. The United States government would fight the longest, bloodiest, most atrocious war it had ever fought to retain its control, which is retaining the Union. They will never let anyone leave. Dude, if Alaska wanted to leave and join Canada, we would invade Canada to get Alaska back. It's a precedent you cannot let set. You cannot let that get out. That you can just leave America. That if you don't like it, you can make your own country. Never can the U.S. government allow it to happen. Like, why the hell is Hawaii part of the United States? Strategic militarily for us, but like, why the hell would Hawaii necessarily... Like, what if Hawaii got a better deal from China? We would fight the longest, bloodiest war ever to prevent that. You see my point? It's like, you don't get to just leave. Even if we don't want you and you don't like it, you don't get to leave. Because if you leave, you tell other people that people are allowed to leave, and they're not actually allowed to leave. That's why I think it's interesting, look at Puerto Rico. Because, I mean, dude, as far as I understand, if the Puerto Rican people were 1,000% on board, slam dunk, let's become a country, it would have happened. I mean, let's become a state, it would have happened already. Like, I don't think there's anyone, like, standing at the door with their hand up, like, See, I disagree with that, Caleb. I don't think the Union would have ever let the South secede. I don't think ever they would have let that happen. I think it's for a country that was really, really, really... I mean, remember, like, seriously, think of the concept of, by the time the Civil War was fought, you had people settled more or less all around the United States, right? But, like, we hadn't fully formed this kind of nation together yet. But the people in the New York and D.C., like the government types, they had their eyes on this country before it came to fruition. And I think they saw the South seceding as the biggest threat to their dominance of the continent. And then, yeah, to your point, imagine that as well. Like, what if what if Kansas did just full on join the Confederacy? What if you had these other states that were in the process of forming and had not fully formed just joined? What if California was like, you know what the hell? We're the West Coast of the Confederacy, right? Like, yeah, like that was just such a big threat to the U.S. government. They could never let that happen. It had to be stamped out. Because, like, it's one thing now to look at the gigantic big United States and think of the few states in the Southeast that formed the Confederacy. And it's like, what? But it's like, it was literally at the time, the like really established part of the United States was basically the East Coast. And it was like the bottom half of the year. It was like an existential, like today, if the states that formed the Confederacy just left America, it'd be a big deal. But it wouldn't be like, oh, there goes basically half the country. It gets like unrecognizable now. We went from a country we went from this idea of sea to shining sea to we're basically the Northeast Peninsula. And the Confederacy is basically the Southeast Peninsula. And then, yeah, it would have started a whole series of frontier wars that would have happened all over the place with people trying to figure out, like, whose side am I joining? You would have, like, expeditionary forces in, like, Mexico and Canada it would have just been, like, the worst thing ever to let happen. But all of those things, they wouldn't happen in the same way because, just we live in a different world now. We don't have expeditionary forces anymore and stuff like that, really. But, like, it's just all the same reasons why you couldn't allow there to be any kind of split. Now, here's the other thing, though. Again, we don't live in a world nowadays necessarily where it's like you would see like a hard dividing drawn line from where the splits would be. You'd probably see the splits happen within the country, and it probably manifests itself in what we see already. I mean, I've argued we've been in, I haven't really argued this, but I believe we've been in a civil war. But like, there's been groups of people fighting for control of this country very openly and very transparently over the last 5 years. Like, we don't live in a world anymore where there would even be like, I remember when we saw all the unrest going on last year, particularly some of the unrest we saw in Portland and stuff. I remember back then thinking that we were going to end up seeing something obviously not the same because there is a whole lot of baggage behind it, but something a little bit similar to what what they called like the Troubles in Ireland, right? This idea that there might be parts of the United States where just these kind of further out frontiers, like Portland, Oregon, right? It's a big city, but it's very far away from Washington, D.C. and the seat of American power. It's pretty far away from even like Los Angeles and San Francisco, these big dominant cities in the West. And, like, you could lose control out there. You might see counties. But as time's gone on, I don't know anymore because it's like it almost does feel like, ironically enough, how, like, one of the kind of, kind of uniquely American things about America over the majority of its life, right? I mean, we're talking about the Civil War, but that was, I believe, the last one. I mean, there was some World War II damage that definitely happened. I think there was even some small World War II action in the continental United States, but very minor, right? I mean, like, one of the things that set America apart from all these other countries is we haven't had wars fought in our soil. And, like, probably don't want to go too far in this, but this is, as Anglos, as speakers of the English language, our understanding of history is very much based on how the English see history, right? So just being English speakers, we have eternal beef with the French and the French speakers, just part of being an English speaker. But anyway, this idea that like French are cowards and the French always surrender and all this stuff, right? But it's like, a lot of that comes from World War II, where France surrendered very quickly. And then a little bit of it comes from World War I, where the British army was definitely more well-equipped at the beginning of the war, and the British and the French didn't like each other that much anyway, so this idea that the French weren't really pulling their weight, and they were the bad soldiers. I read an account of World War I from a Prussian soldier's account. Even he looked at it that way, where it was like there was like the English soldiers, and then even like the Indian soldiers that came from like the colonies, like they were above the French soldiers. They were cowards. But it's like, France as a continent experienced basically, and not as a continent, but France as a nation experienced most of Europe, don't get me wrong, but it was like damn near eternal war for like 200 years. And it was about 150 years of absolute total war. That just, entire generations of like people just massacred. Entire cities destroyed, rebuilt, destroyed, rebuilt, destroyed, rebuilt. I mean, like all of that is stuff America has been privileged enough to avoid. War of 1812, right? We battled like I think the Battle of New Orleans is actually fought after the war was ended. But the Spanish America, we had a couple of wars, a little bit of stuff that happened in the United States soil, but we have not had the destruction and the rebuilding and the destruction that you've seen in, like Germany got. And here's the thing too, we might think of just World War II or World War I. Like Napoleon Bonaparte was rampaging through Europe in 1810, 1812. Battle of Waterloo is 1815. Battle of Leipzig is 1813, I want to say. I don't know. It might be earlier than that. But I mean, like, these were big cities that were, like, besieged and shot by cannons and burned and blown up and entire armies of young men raised and massacred. This is all stuff America has just been separate from. However, in the future, we don't really fight wars with, for example, there's a quote from, it was some naval captain from back in the day. But he basically said that, like, countries become free through diplomacy, but, like, they stay free through the bayonet, right? Like, you can have a diplomatic win to get your independence, but to stay free, you have to fight and you have to send soldiers out to fight the people. We don't really live in a world where it's like that anymore, right? 1800s were very much a time like that, where it was like, yeah, dude, like people might try to invade you. But nowadays, no, a lot of it is, we would much rather just control your population by feeding them. We'd much rather, here's the other thing, right? This is a avenue of warfare that people have been trying to use, by the way, for like ever, but just never really, like seriously, realistically, how was Hannibal and his mercenary army of Carthaginians gonna like poison the minds and win the hearts and minds and like poison the ideas of like the Roman citizenry? It was impossible, dude. Like, first of all, how would they even like get it across to them? Like what the hell it is they're talking about, right? Like the language barriers, just like the way they do, like a lot of this was not even ever in their own possibility. World we live in now, man, like North Korea can just have a full team of people staffed with nothing but feeding BS information about North Korea out there. Like this is this idea of like taking over a country without ever firing a shot. It's always been the goal. It's always been the dream to just conquer a country by having all their people turn on their government. Like but now it's reality. Now it can happen. And I think as a result, it's why warfare in a way is scaled back a bit. Because, yeah, dude, England, the European Union is a great example, right? If Germany wants to conquer France, they just got to make sure that they control the European Union and that the European Union controls France. Now Germany controls France. And all they have to do is convince the French people that the European Union is good and that the nation of France needs to stay in the European Union. And then guess what? Whoever controls the European Union controls France. They didn't fire one shot. They control the country. It took them over. They don't even elect the people in charge of the EU. They're appointed. Oh, Soldier won. The 775 Hong Kong dollars. Thank you very much, man. He said Andrew didn't accept the spot in the Biden campaign, so you went our Twitter. But thank you, man. 100 USD. I appreciate it. I also wonder. I wonder what actually happened with Andrew and Biden. I knew Andrew Yang was never going to end up in the. Dude, did you guys see who's? Did you see which name you probably haven't heard in a very long time got brought up the other day? Dude, these people have friends. They owe favors. Why do you think Merrick Garland's the Attorney General? Think because there's just nobody better? Or do you think it's because Biden's getting his win back? You know, like, there's this famous story where Hulk Hogan lost a wrestling match to the Ultimate Warrior. It was like WrestleMania, no, couldn't WrestleMania 8. He left the company then. It was like WrestleMania 6 or something like that. Hulk Hogan lost to the Ultimate Warrior, and then Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior didn't wrestle in the same company for like a decade and back. And anyway, eventually Hulk Hogan was finally able to set up a match where he was going to wrestle the Ultimate Warrior and he was going to beat him, and it was a terrible match and it was awful, but whatever, dude. Hulk Hogan got his win back. Hulk Hogan did not lose to the Ultimate Warrior in the last match they had. He won, brother. It's kind of what it feels like with Merrick Garland being Attorney General, man. It's like Biden had to get his win back, brother. You might have had me last time, brother. In 2014, brother. But now, in 2021, brother, it's different, brother. And it's just political BS, always, man. That's why Andrew never had a spot. Never had a chance. And, like, Like, you saw who got the cabinet spot, by the way. Who was the person that ran against Joe Biden that got the cabinet spot? You guys remember? Remember, I believe there is a person who ran against Joe Biden and got a cabinet spot. One single person, I believe, right? I don't think Jay Inslee got one. I don't think Elizabeth Warren got one. I don't think Bernie got one. By the way, I kind of felt bad for the Bernie bros when they were like dancing around because the Senate Judiciary Budget Chair? It's like, dude, wasn't he running for fucking president 9 months ago? Now they're dancing around. Oh, he's a Senate Judiciary. far fall from president, man. But yeah, Oh, Cardin's still around. I just moved out of California. I'm in Nevada now, and Cardin's really busy, so I'm just kind of doing this on my own. For right now, you'll be seeing Cardin again soon. We're working on some stuff. Honestly, I'm planning in the next week or so. I don't want to give dates because I end up lying if I give dates, but going to do like a little rebrand here and kind of reset the channel up a little bit more because I think it's going to be mostly just me moving forward just because Cardin's a busy guy. Yeah, Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg was the one who got the spot. Now you got to ask, first of all, I mean, he was like one of the younger guys. I think the youngest. However, there is a date. Speaking of the Bernie bros, right? There is the date that a lot of them, I'm sure, remember. I'm sure a lot of people, dude. And I even in hindsight, man, I gotta remember. March. Oh, was it updated? But I believe it was. Yeah, March 2nd, the day everybody dropped out and endorsed Biden. But you know who that first domino really was? It was Pete Buttigieg. He was that first domino. I wonder if it's as simple, and again, this is probably too simple, but I wonder if it's as simple as he was simply the first person to say, Biden team started calling and saying, look, guys, Bernie just beat us in Nevada. We can't let Bernie win. Take one for the team. Be a team player here. This is Team Democrat. Remember, Bernie's not a Democrat. This is Team Democrat here. And I wonder if Pete was the first guy who was like, you know what, Joe, I'm with you. Let's do it. So I remember in this interview right here, this little picture you guys see in this press conference, Joe Biden compared him to his dead son, Beau, who by all accounts was like, I don't want to disparage Hunter Biden too much, but like the great son, right? Like the son Joe Biden was like everything Joe Biden dreamed of was Beau Biden. That's what we compared Pete Buttigieg to during this picture. Pete Buttigieg, who's got the cabinet spot. He's the train czar, right? What is he? The transportation secretary? Dude, Pete Buttigieg's own propaganda minister, Liz Smith, all she could say was, Pete Buttigieg loves board games about trains. That's what she came up with when he was like, it so transparently is just a favor. Pete Buttigieg was owed a favor by Biden, and Biden paid him back. But I guess in a way that says how Biden views the transportation secretary. He's like, dude, fucking give it to the boy wonder over there. Who cares? My dog could have this position, right? But yeah, like it's crazy. No one even bothered to make a case for why it actually made sense for Pete Buttigieg to be transportation. Like no one. What is this? The college town he was the mayor of for a couple of years, and by the way, the couple of years he was the mayor of that town, he had 1 foot out the door and ran for anything that he thought was better than mayor of Ann Arbor. Like, do they have like the best buses? Like, do the buses run even more than on time? I was like, what is this? No, everyone knew the game. To use a wrestling terminology here, he did the job, right? He let Joe Biden job him out. He laid down, Biden pinned him in the middle of the ring, but then as a result, down the line, he got the rub. He gets the position. Whereas the other people are like, I'm not gonna do the job for Biden, dude. It's like 90 years old. Nah, people like me, I can win this. All those people, man, they're on the outside looking in. But I don't know. That's just from it looks like from where I'm sitting. It looks like Pete was the one who was like, I'll do the job, man. Whatever. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll let him pin me. And everyone else is like, nah, dude. Not Biden. He's too old. He's done. He's washed up. How is anyone going to take me seriously if let Joe Biden beat me in a match? He's like 90 and senile. People will think I'm an idiot if I lose to him. But Pete Buttigieg, he realized, hey, dude, he might be 500 years old and have donkey brains, but he's a star. He's Joe Biden, and company's going to side with him over Bernie. So, like, really, it's a choice between Bernie and Biden. Everyone else did not have the support systems, and the real support system was behind Biden. So he made the good chance. He might have looked kind of goofy then, right? Might have looked a little bit like, oh man, Pete Buttigieg, can't believe you, blah, blah, selling out. But hey, who's got the job, right? Who's a cabinet member? Well, other people aren't. It's the guy that did the job, man. Everyone else, they're wishing they were where he was. You remember also, Pete almost won Iowa. Isn't that hilarious? Like, Pete almost, like, around the time he had dropped out, like, he was performing well in the early states, and he was just like, nah. I think he understood too. It's not about having a good showing and losing. It's about losing at the right time to the right person. That's how you get ahead in that business. Klobuchar did drop out the same day, and Klobuchar actually announced he was dropping out on a Joe Biden rally stage. But again, it's the behind the scenes conversations. I wonder if maybe she said no. Maybe they called her first. He said no. They called Pete. He said yeah. They called her back, and she's like, actually, yeah. It's like, yeah, but you said no the first time. We remembered that. But yeah, that's why I kind of knew Andrew Yang was never going to have a cabinet spot, man. I was just like, dude, he didn't play ball. He's not one of them. He's not part of the team. He isn't. Like, dude, look at this picture. Look at Joe Biden rubbing his shoulders and smiling. Like, what is this, dude? Look at Pete. He knows right there. Hey, as long as Biden wins this, I'm in, man. I did my part. And then, here we are. All these years later, and, I want to pull something up. I want to look and see how many days passed from Pete Buttigieg's victory speech in the Iowa caucus and him dropping out to endorse Biden. What's the claims victory, I guess. I'm trying to think of the Google search. How many days actually was that? About a month. So like early February, like February 4th. Probably a day or two earlier than this. Yeah. From declaring victory before results are released to a month later dropping out of the race to endorse somebody you beat in Iowa. I think by the time it was all said and done, we found out that Biden actually won Iowa anyway. But you know what I mean? It was like there was this narrative that like Buttigieg was challenging, and he was he was a serious threat. Blah blah blah, and then it's just like, oh no, vote for Joe Biden. What about Pete? What about you, man? I thought you were a threat. I thought you were someone to. No. He's out of the race now. Now he's endorsing Joe Biden, and now he has a spot. Yeah, the Kamala thing, dude. Kamala is no disrespect to Kamala Harris. Or I guess I'll just call her Senator Harris. Oh no, Vice President Harris. Sorry. Well, I'm speaking of at the time the person who was Senator Harris, right? But dude, I think Joe Biden picked her because how do I word this correctly? Great example. In the NFL, right? In the NFL, basically the way coaching works, I don't know if you guys are NFL fans or not. In the NFL, there's the head coach, but then there's also like the offensive coordinator and then the defensive coordinator. But then there's like the wide receiver coach. And then there's like the strength and conditioning coach. And then there's like the character coach. Like you have all these people that make the coaching staff underneath the head coach, right? So in the NFL, you'll notice a lot of the really good head coaches in the NFL, they have people that leave their coaching trees, leave their coaching tree, like leave from being one of their employed like assistant coaches. And there's some coaches you'll notice it's like their assistants are always good head coaches. Like they always have these really good assistant coaches that can go anywhere and be a head coach. A lot of them will hire people who are just head coaches to be their assistant. But then you'll notice the weak coaches, the coaches that aren't very good, the coaches that are really just trying to keep their job, they always have these mediocre assistants. They always have, like an offensive and defensive coordinator that's just like some random person that's been in the NFL forever and they never got a head coaching job and they're never going to get one. Now, are they going to help you win the most games as a coach? Probably not. Are they going to take your job? Is anyone going to be in the media writing about how they should replace you with them? Definitely not. Definitely not. So what's more important, winning games or not having that threat in the building? To people that are good coaches who believe in themselves, winning games, man. I don't give a shit who's coaching underneath me. I'm the prize here. Bad coaches? Hey, dude, I gotta focus on keeping my job first. Then we can win games. And keeping my job and make sure that I don't have my replacement in the building. Because see, when your replacement's in the building, one, it makes you look even worse. And two, it gets that conversation starting real quick. Your NFL coach who's got really good assistant. If you're an NFL coach who has assistant coaches that have been actual head coaches and like you're coaching, right? And it's like you're losing. After every loss, people are going to be saying, why don't they just fire him and replace him with the other guy? Can't be any worse. He's already been a coach. So they have to make sure they have people underneath them that nobody would ever consider making the head coach. Like, yeah, I mean, he sucks, dude, but like, who are you going to make the head coach? All these guys are just kids and idiots and they don't know anything. And in a way, that story reminds me a lot of how Mrs. Harris found herself as the vice president, right? I feel like Joe Biden was looking around and he was like, they can't be too good. They can't be so good that people start asking, wait a minute, why aren't they president? They can't be they can't be like the worst person ever, but they also, people can't like them. It can't be someone that has like a cult of personality around them, right? It can't be someone, again, to use a little bit of a wrestling analogy, there was a wrestler, forgot his name, he made a bunch of YouTube videos and got himself really popular, and he was actually punished by the WWE because he was getting popular outside of their consent. He was getting people to like him without them doing it. Joe Biden didn't want that. Joe Biden did not want a VP that could go out there and get over on their own, right? Got to be someone that, someone that looks good standing next to me, someone that looks vice presidential, but like, again, to use a football analogy, they got to look good holding the clipboard. They got to have the headset on. They got to look like a head football coach, but like in reality, they got to be bum idiots that will never threaten my job. I think Harris fit that role perfect. She looks the role of a modern politician, right? She looks like what a 2021 American politician should look like. But she's also no threat to anyone. Like, dude, she's not going to replace Joe Biden. Even if Joe Biden stumbles through every press conference he gives, no one's going to say, well, Kamala. No one's going to say turn to Harris ever. And for that reason, she was the perfect choice. The perfect choice for Joe Biden. Because nobody's going to be calling to make her president. No one's going to be saying we should follow Joe. We should fire Joe and promote the offensive coordinator. No one's going to be saying that. Do I think Obama felt that way towards Biden? Yes. And I think now we're getting to the real bad sense here is talk about, and this kind of gets to what I was talking about earlier. America's become a country that's turned its energy inwards. Talk about a nation in decay, right? Obama picks Biden because, Biden's a useless stooge. I think Biden perfectly encapsulates that role, right? Did Biden had tried to be president and failed like multiple times. He embarrassingly had to back out of a presidential election after he was called out for plagiarizing a speech in like the 80s, right? Like this was a guy who had a long history of getting up to senator, but he's not going to get anywhere above that. It was perfect to be Obama's VP. Seriously, did anybody, even when people were mad at Obama, was anybody ever calling to replace Obama with Biden? Like, even like actual racists, were they even calling to replace Obama with Biden? Even though Biden's one of them too, who had a racist in the presidency. But it's like, I don't think anyone really was that much. Because nobody wanted Joe Biden. So yeah, we're great for Obama. Nobody was gonna say, oh, we gotta get this Obama guy out of here and put Biden in. No one was gonna say that. Everyone was always like, yeah, well, I mean, You know, it was kind of almost, it was almost like kind of like the joke when everyone was trying to go after and get Trump impeached all the time. There was a joke. It's like, wow, people really want Mike Pence to be president. Right? But it's like, you don't have to understand, like, that's the way our government works. If we don't like our president and remove him, then the VP is the next person in line. I'm sure we could remove them as well, and, you know, if we really wanted to, but point being is that's that chain of command right there. And it's again, I guess you could say one of the, I mean, again, Dave Chappelle, though, it's a little bit, I don't know if it was, what's what I'm looking for? Like predicting, but it's like, yeah, it's like, dude, like, but here's something else too. That's also why Dave Chappelle would never run for or be president. The people that run for president and the people that not deserve, but the people that really give it their all to be president, they're like, dude, George Washington can be my VP. I don't care. Nobody's going to be calling to get me replaced. Right? However, those kind of people I feel like are just selected out of American politics. Those kind of people are not allowed to get ahead in American politics. They find you and they hold you back because they're like, we can't control you. And if you believe in yourself, if you believe that you are shit without us, if you believe you can get on in this country without our institutional support, they have to cut you out at the knees and hold you back because then you're dangerous to them, man. Like, they're like, no, they gotta go. And you know what's one of the easiest ways to doing that? They do it all the time. They just promote the patsies and the stooges above you. They promote the morons. They're gonna just basically sell out when they're done using them. They promote them above you because they know that there's gonna be the morons. So they're like, no, put the morons in the positions of power, and we just control the morons, so we hold the power. Keep the people that want to do something in those positions out because they'll do something. Who would be a good VP for Yang then? Honestly, I feel like Yang could just pick whoever he would feel like he vibe with. I feel like Yang would be the kind of person he wouldn't have to like strategically pick his VP beyond. I would say the generic, it would probably help for him to have an older, established politician, similar to like what Trump did with Pence. Like Pence is just like a boring Republican that existed forever. So like if people were like, I mean, he's a little bit unexperienced, he's having that person to point to and be like, oh no, look, that's the key, like that's the real politician who's helping sign off on what he does. Like honestly, politicians have speech writers. They don't write their own speeches. It's like comedians that have joke writers. They just deliver the words, dude. They don't come up with them. That's always how it's been. Someone else comes up with the ideas and the words, and they give them to the politicians, who then just feed them to us. Yeah, what is it? They have falling up. It's another word for it. Falling up. The Peter principle I've heard. Here's the thing, right? And you brought it up great. Heck Energy says, when I was working for a union grocery store, the morons always got, quote, promoted out. Because here's what happens, right? Whoever's in charge of promoting people in your union grocery store probably has a lot more authority to promote than they do to fire. Right? And it's bad for the store if idiots are getting in the way of productivity. But you also just can't fire them because you'd rather they worked harder. Or you'd rather they were a little bit more heady and a little bit more cerebral in their work. You're not allowed to fire someone for that. All you're allowed to do is promote them, man. Because, like, if you're the manager of the grocery store, it's my ass if we have dumbass employees screwing everything up. They're going to blame me. So I have to just remove the bad ones, and I can't fire them. So all I could do is promote them so they're ruining someone else's day instead of mine. That's why I have very little faith in any institution, man. Every institution is the exact same thing. Insecure, weak, feeble people holding everyone down. That's how every institution works, man. The feeblest, most insecure, the people who have the least believe in themselves, but the most outsized sense of self-worth, just hold everyone down. Because here's the thing. The people that aren't like that, they don't really have this compulsion to do that, so they just kind of go about life in an honest manner. And they're like, well, tell you what, man, I'll work hard as I can, you work hard as you can, whoever wins, right? And they'll say that, And then behind the scenes be like, dude, there's no way I can hope to actually just work harder. I know, I have an idea. And then they just do all the BS, man. They play games, they manipulate, they do all that. Because it's easier, simpler, it's faster than actually trying to win your arguments, trying to present a good case. Because again, man, you could be correct and you could have the strongest argument and people could just choose to not listen to you. That's just reality, you know? Like it's people get more cynical with age. How are you going to be when you're Biden's age? Maybe I'll get less cynical with age. Maybe I'll be one of those people, like a Benjamin Button. You know, I'll have like a reverse process for my my cynicism. Maybe I'll find things to believe in. I gotta be honest though, man. It's like. It's this last couple months really has been the like what is it? I don't want to use like the word black pill, but it's been like it really is. It's worse than we thought kind of realizations. I mean, like, 'cause it's just if we think things are bad now, when the kids that we're educating currently grow up, whatever the hell that means, it's over, man. And I really, really don't want to sound pessimistic or like I'm being, but it's just like, if we didn't somehow, and by we, I mean like United States of America, didn't somehow raise these next few generations of kids, or like if these kids are not resilient in spite of their conditioning, dude, it's going to be really bad. I think a great microcosm for it is Obama picking Biden to be his vice president because of Biden. I will say one thing though, Obama was a bit more of a strong, personable leader type where I feel like he probably wasn't looking to pick as weak of a VP as Biden's looking, but still, I think part of Biden being VP to Obama was no one was going to call to make Biden president. And now we have Biden as president, picking an even less qualified person to be, not less qualified, but a less deserving person to be his vice president. So no one calls to make her president, right? Like that's the direction we're headed in. And that has nothing to do with how, dude, just recently, I've been doing a lot of reflecting on my own public education experience, right? I was doing a lot of reflecting on how I remembered coming up through public school. I was thinking of the worksheets they had us take home and fill out, and I was thinking about how much worse things have gotten. Oh, man, it's like, I think already, currently today, I don't think Americans are individually heartless and cruel. I think the United States of America is a very heartless, cruel country. And I think we're raising a generation of even more heartless and more cruel people to inhabit it. Like, I fear there will become a day where I don't even say anymore that individual Americans are not cruel. It's just the country. I feel like we're heading very close to a point where it's going to be like Americans are just cruel and heartless. Just bad people. And we're making more of them, man. We're gonna be a country of petty, jealous people that don't believe in themselves and think other people are out to get them. That's more or less what Americans are becoming. It's how we teach our kids to think. It's how the media tells the adults to think. And it really bothers me, man. But it's the reality, you know. Like we literally make kids, and we don't make them sit in rooms anymore, but like, dude, kids are like doing worksheets that are just like training them to be evil, heartless people that just deperson entire groups of human beings and wish suffering on them. Like, that's what we're training kids to be. Now, maybe it's because the people in charge have a plan. Maybe the people in charge and their 40-year plan, we're going to go to war soon, and we're going to need to be heartless for that war. For example, one of my favorite movies ever is a movie by the name of Videodrome. And as society continues to, or as American culture continues to progress the way American culture progresses, I just keep coming back to this movie Videodrome, man. And there's one line in the movie where I'll be a little bit literal with it, but you can kind of get it. Where one of the characters in the movie, he says that I'm paraphrasing it, but essentially he says that the television screen has become the retina of the mind's eye. And so as a result, television is reality, and the things that happen on television are reality, and the things that happen in reality are less than real. I'm butchering it. But this idea was, as we become more and more in tuned and connected with the screens and the visual stimuli we get, that becomes real. Regardless if it's true or actually real, that's our reality. And anything that goes on around it, anything that happens outside of it, isn't really real. Only thing that's real is what's on the screen. And then in the movie, spoilers, but the whole point of the movie is there's some, I don't know if they're a company or the government. I think it's like a private company. Or else I think it might be the government. They're not that specific. But anyway, the premise of the movie is that Americans are becoming too soft. They're becoming weak and lazy, and they're pointless, and they're incapable of violence. And so this company comes up with this TV show, basically. In this TV show, it's like a little bit science fiction, but it basically reprograms your mind to make you a crazy, paranoid, violent lunatic in the name of kind of toughening up America, because we're becoming weak and we needed to be tough to deal with the world. It's basically the premise of the film. And I think of what's going on in America right now. I think of the things that are I think of the visual stimuli we're being given. I think of the things we teach our children. And I just think of there's a monologue one of the characters gives. And he just keeps saying, Americans are very weak and the rest of the world is very tough. And we need to toughen Americans up. And I wonder if in a way, that's why we're being trained to be cruel and heartless. It's because the world's cruel and heartless. And that's what, and this isn't my perspective. I'm saying is maybe the governments came to that perspective. The governments came to the idea that, you know what? Americans aren't ready for what's coming. So we need to make sure they're ready for it. We need to make sure that Americans are totally prepared to deperson groups of people and subjugate them to death. Because that's kind of what we train people for. That is. Again, it's manipulated and it's moved into a nice way, right? But more or less, we kind of teach Americans specifically now to separate human beings by immutable characteristics and level the playing field, so to speak, whenever you can. Whenever you can, separate all the groups into different groups by characteristics they can't change, and then level that playing field. It's more or less how Americans feel nowadays. And then what if one day we're taught that in order to level the playing field, we have to invade this country and, burn down their cities, destroy the capital, and kill and put millions of people into extreme suffering. But it's leveling the playing field. That's how we're doing it. Because this group of people is bad, and this group of people needs to be leveled out. Because we are building towards that. Like when I read about how the American education system works and the things we're teaching kids, and I kind of just relate it to my own experience in the education system, because as I'm getting older, the more I'm looking back on the American education system is basically the American education system legitimately is just the American propaganda and indoctrination system. Now here's the thing. Propaganda and indoctrination don't have to be bad, right? If you're just being propagandized to and indoctrinated into becoming a better American, right? Is that the worst thing? Is to make people better people? But they're trying to brainwash and indoctrinate you into being those better people, right? But it does feel like nowadays there's a bit of a lot of like prejudicial thinking working its way into the American education system. And I even had a little bit of it when I was a kid. It's nowhere near what I'm hearing now. I mean, dude, some of like the really big progressive areas, like it's just like New York City, dude. Like I'm reading what's going on with the New York City. Like, dude, just recently, this woman sued the New York City Board of Education. And I was reading through why she sued them and what she was alleging was going on. And if those are the people that are in charge of the education system, I cannot even imagine what gets down to the kids. Now, hopefully, like what generally happens is the people that are trying to propagandize and indoctrinate, they kind of suck at it and it doesn't work and it doesn't take. So hopefully that's going on. Hopefully it doesn't take. Hopefully American kids aren't going to believe the nonsense being poisoned into their heads. But it's you know what, I think a great way to kind of, and I'm going to be wrapping up in a little bit here, but I think a great way to kind of reference what I mean a little bit is, it's like I notice a lot of people who seem to think that the reason why the Nazis were evil is because they had a fascist government. Which is like, no, that wasn't it, man. Like, they did a lot of things. Having a fascist government was like one of the least important things. Like in the 1930s, America kind of fancied itself to be fascist as well. It was like fascism was like this hot, hip, rising political, like no, that wasn't why we invaded Germany ultimately. But you tell kids long enough that no, it was just the fascism. It was just the fascism. It was just the fascism. Wasn't the genocide. It wasn't the whole taking over the world. It wasn't the whole rounding up people because of their race and executing them. No. It was the fascism. It's like, sure, you can argue fascism helped them do that, but it's like they could have done that as an empire. They could have done that as communists. They could have done that as anything. Like, it's almost irrelevant that they were fascists, really. It's like other fascist governments. They didn't quite do what Hitler did. Like, Hitler was very unique in what he was doing because he had a very specific ideology unique to him that wasn't fascism. That was really the bad thing we cared about. But tell people over a long enough period of time, no. It was the fascism. It was the way they set their government up that was the problem. It wasn't the things they did. Because then, all of a sudden, it sets up the system where people believe it doesn't matter what the government does as long as they're a good kind of government, right? As long as they're one of the noble forms of government, like who cares what they do? As long as we're a democratic republic, who cares if we have internment camps during the same war? We weren't executing them, right? It's not like we were genociding them. Remember, we're a democratic republic. But they were fascists. It's like, yeah, but that's relevant. But it's again, it's really well, in World War, remember though, what empire did we really assist, and how many empires did we destroy in World War I? I mean, coming out of the First World War, was there other real global empires aside from America? I'm just asking. I'm just asking if the end result of World War I was an economically crippled Western Europe, a Eastern Europe in complete political turmoil, and a very strong unified American republic that had just militarized itself. I wonder if that was the end goal. Or American empire. America was still an empire back then. I mean, we're an empire now. We were like a legit empire back then. Right? But again, it's why you'll notice. Dude, I remember in school when they were teaching us about World War II and they were really hammering hardcore about the communists and the fascists. And I remember just hearing that over and over again as a kid. I kept asking them, like, yeah, but why were they wrong? Like, why were communists and fascists just evil for being communists and fascists? Like, they just had a different way their governments worked and they were evil because of it? Dude, World War I directly led to the end of the Ottoman Empire and was I guess what, Hong Kong and India were like the big colonies left of Britain still at the end of the First World War. And also keep in mind, I mean, by the time World War I ended, the monarch of England was not, they were more or less a republic. They weren't even like this, monarchical empire. They were closer to the kind of empire America was than they were to the kind of empire they were just a little bit before that. But yeah, I mean, and then also keep in mind, like if your home country was just attacked and destroyed and you fought a long bloody war in it, you weren't really, the empire. I mean, like for example, as I brought up, there was literally soldiers from India fighting in France for the British Army. I believe in World War II as well, right? But it was, it was the end. It was the later stage of the British Empire. It wasn't quite. There was European, but those European colonies in Africa after World War I believe like the period from like the end of World War I through like the 50s and 60s was a period of independent, like just basically the World War I and World War II were so destructive to Western Europe. They did start kind of giving up control of a lot of their colonies, or a lot of their colonies started operating a little bit more independent because like just the home front was a mess, Like World War I and World War II actually did help lead to the end of a lot of those colonies because it was just like the European countries couldn't really focus on them anymore, They're like, dude, I mean, we kind of can't spend a lot of time and energy and resources in these countries. Like we got to have that spent in England and France and Germany. We can't spend that in other places like we used to. We can't, like, not even like money, just men, resources, energy, willpower. Like it needed to be focused elsewhere. America didn't really have those issues though. Don't, how about this? I encourage, I brought this before, but I encourage a lot of you, if you're interested in the kind of country America is, and if you want to understand how America has always functioned and always will function, I just encourage you to take another look at a story you might have been taught in school. To be 100% frank, I don't even remember learning this in school. But the sinking of the USS Maine. To me, the sinking of the USS Maine is a fundamental turning point in America. It was when, for many reasons, right? But that was really when this young country that didn't quite know 100% what it was in the world stage yet, that was when it learned who they were in the world stage. It was the sinking of the USS Maine, the Spanish-American War that followed, and the treaty at the end of the Spanish-American War. That's when America became something different. That's when America truly became an empire. But what price did it pay? What price did we pay, though? What did America have to do to put itself in that position, right? Did we have the American press lie about foreign countries? Did we have the American press make up oppression and suffering that wasn't actually really going on at the time? Did we have the U.S. government, maybe orchestrate events and then capitalize off the home front, let's say, mood and temperature after that? I mean, did we, what is that? What did we learn there? And you look at what happened after what was happening shortly after that, and yeah, America came out really strong on the other side. And like many countries, America learned a very important lesson as a country, not as the citizens, but the nation, the state, the actual organism called the United States federal government learned a very valuable lesson that day. Learned that if you can get the people to support what you're doing, you can do damn near anything. And who cares what the world thinks? Your people support you, your people love you, and you got what you wanted. And I don't think we ever stopped, man. I think the U.S. government, whenever it's put into a corner, whenever we really don't know what our next play is, I think we go. And I'm sure the U.S. Maine wasn't the first one. It was the big one. I mean, in a way, I think there's people that argue you can go back to the the shot heard around the world, like the Boston Massacre or whatever. But I mean, that's a bit too early. I mean, the USS Maine incident was really when the U.S. kind of came into its own and it figured out how you do this shit in the modern era, how you really exist as a modern superpower. And we went on one hell of a run after that, man. The United States went on a hell of a run after that. But eventually the tricks stopped working. And I think the Vietnam War was really when the wheels fell off. But then, what do you know? All of a sudden, we're in the Middle East again. Why are we in the Middle East? Like, what's the end result of the war on terror? Is it that the United States has much greater control and influence in the Middle East? Is it that the United States gets to work as an undue sort of kingmaker in some regions of the Middle East? Is it that the United States and Israel have a very strong military alliance? Is it the fact that the United States has got control, and not control, but in a way, I don't think we went to the Middle East to get oil to bring back to America. I think we go to the Middle East to have our thumb on the scale when it comes down to who gets that oil, right? Maybe there's some countries or continents we don't want access to that oil, even though we don't need it. Maybe they need it less than we do even, or we could do more good with it, right? And now we have military bases all over the Middle East, all over the Middle East. American influence is very high all over the Middle East. I think we have better relations with like Saudi Arabia and stuff now. I think we help fund the Saudi Arabian military. We help arm the Saudi Arabian military now. Seems like, hey, it might suck for us as Americans. Our rights and liberties are just taken away whatever the government feels like now because of the war on terror. And then on the side of that, we have military bases all over the Middle East. We have all kinds of new friends and allies we helped put in power. We help hold people down at the behest of other countries. We drone strike random ass countries. Well, we have a lot of influence in that part of the world, man. We have a lot of influence in that part of the world. A lot more than we used to. More than we used to. Is that good for average Americans sitting back at home? No. Is it good for the United States government organism? Yes. It benefits that. It doesn't benefit us. Remember though, America has its own oil. Like there's other parts of the world where they have like not very much, like, there's oil. But my point is they're not able to extract as much oil from other continents or countries as America is from ours. So that's why controlling what oil is able to go to those countries that can't just dig their own oil up the way we can is very valuable to us. Dude, that's how you control which country gets to develop and which one doesn't. That's how. Control the oil. And you can decide who stays a developing country and who doesn't. America doesn't care about the oil we need. So yeah, I mean it's. Speaking of Marion H. bringing up what happened with trying to redraw everything in the Middle East, how about when you go a little bit further north and east as well? You see what happened in Eastern Europe when people start deciding you guys are one country now. No, we aren't. How many times that happened in Eastern Europe, man? And just think about it. Happened in Central and North Africa. Probably happened in Southern Africa as well. It's happened it happens all over the place. Because it's a different world, and something else though. Again, just to kind of wrap a little bow on this, right? What war did a lot of this stuff goes back thousands of years. I remember like during World War I, there was something called the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Habsburgs, right? Like all of that's destroyed, and it's been a lot of those regions have been in. And again, a lot of them were in turmoil before then, but a lot of those regions have been in just endless turmoil since. But again, it's one of the reasons why there's when it comes to like the U.S. government, but the U.S. government and what our government does, what the people in our government say, all that stuff. It's so much bigger than regular everyday citizens. You kind of can't even. Just the one thing, if you've learned anything from this stream, it's just to keep in mind that when politicians vote on a bill, when a bill passes, when any of this stuff happens, all of the real work was done behind the scenes and we didn't see it, right? Somebody told them they're allowed to vote for it now, and that's why they vote for it. These people don't have these like principled awakenings, man. They're just told, okay, we bribed the people we have to bribe. We made sure we kind of greased the palms we have to grease. You guys can vote for that bill now. And then we just see the politicians go, we voted for and passed this thing. It's like, you were allowed to, man. Like, they just told you you're allowed to now. Why are you allowed to now? What changed? The world nicer, or are you just set up in a position now where it doesn't matter if we benefit off this anymore? So that's it. And then probably wrap up here in the next 10 minutes. If you guys have any questions, put them in the chat. I'm just going to grab some water real quick. Whoop. Yeah, anyway, so there's a very long-winded explanation for why I believe, at the end of the day, misinformation, guys, it's a good thing. We need it. We need people out there that are wrong so we can point to them and say, see, they're wrong and they're right. If we create this system where we convince ourselves that somehow we know what's right and we know what's wrong and the wrong information doesn't even make it out, we're fools then, man. Just fools. But, I don't know. Hopefully, ideally, in the long run. I don't know, man, though. I also gotta say, I really don't think... I don't have very, very high hopes for the direction of this country. I really don't. It's not like doom and gloom. I don't think the world's over or anything like that. But like, I just really don't think we are heading in the direction countries need to head in to get stronger, unless, like I said, the idea is to make America, kind of toughen us up a little bit, I guess, so that we're ready for whatever the government knows is coming next, right? But just hope it's not the case. I hope it's not. I hope neither of those things are the case. Hope America turns around, pulls it through. But we are getting weaker. We are becoming worse as a nation. We're becoming a weaker, and sorry, people. Maybe the country's standing is getting stronger, but it's just like we as an American people, we are definitely not a stronger group of people than we used to be. I think we are. I think we have made things too soft and comfortable for ourselves, and we've just become weak as people. We're a country of weak people that aren't capable of achieving what our ancestors were. I don't think the universe works on this linear progression scale. Right? In a way, to kind of get back to what I was talking about before, some people come to like the Dark Ages or something like that. But maybe the Western world will have to enter another period of, because like one thing, if you take a look at like the medieval period, like the Dark Ages, or whatever, there was a lot of, and I know modern pseudo-atheist Americans disrespect a lot of this, but there was a lot of really interesting like philosophy work done in the school of like theology, but it was just philosophy. It was just thinking about human beings. And a lot of that, by the way, would go on to help lay the ground. A lot of it would be like criticisms of religion from religious people and stuff. But like a lot of these like growths helped launch into like the Renaissance in a way. And a lot of Renaissance thinkers went back further, but still the Great Enlightenment, like the point is all this stuff adds to it. And so perhaps Americans, we're in that kind of that phase before another enlightenment, another awakening, right? Maybe we're in that phase where we look inward for a very long time as a society, and we learn some new things about the human creature, and better ways of motivating it, better ways of propelling it, and then we embrace that and we do that in the future. But for now, we're definitely just stuck in our heads, lost in our heads. I want to get back. Someone I think asked a question earlier. Here we go. The Illustrating Bard, $2 super chat. Thank you, man, for missing that. He said, actress fired for conservative tweet. Thoughts? Well, what's her name? MMA fighter, like Gina Carano? I think's her name. I think she was fired because she was not a part of the ideological team of people that have taken ownership of Disney's properties in a way. That makes sense? Like, cause there's nothing conservative about saying that, like, there's honestly nothing Gina Carano said was like conservative. It was more just kind of like socially to the right. Even then, it's like, I don't even know if you call it like conservative, right? However, it's like there's definitely a very, very socially progressive wing of people that have kind of been taking ownership of certain intellectual properties and kind of demanding ideological purity in that property because, hey, we're the fans of this property and how dare you have someone harmful in the property. So we, as the fan base, demand to be removed. It really has less to do with her opinions or thoughts and more to do with the fact that she isn't one of them. She doesn't say the right things. I mean, how clear as day could it be? All of this started because she didn't put pronouns in her bio. Like, how much more clear as day could it be? It's like, literally, she didn't wear the badge, so they wouldn't let her in the club. It's that simple, man. That's why all the nonsense fallout that's happened after that, it's like, dude, they told her to put the uniform on and join the club. She said, I'm not going to do that, and they kicked her to the curb. It's literally what happened. Her tweeting that Instagram post she put had nothing to do with her getting fired. She was fired because she was an enemy of the wrong people to be an enemy of right now, to be frank. Especially in the entertainment industry. You better put every pronoun up. You better just brain dead, mind-numbingly tweet out whatever the progressive slogan of the week is. Or you just don't have a job anymore. And if you want a job, what's easier than just putting pronouns in your bio and tweeting out progressive slogans? It's the easiest shit ever. You don't even believe it. You just got to do it. No one cares if you believe it. It's the best part. No one even cares if you believe it. You just got to say it and do it. Like, you can literally give interviews where you're just like, oh yeah, I don't believe any of that stuff. It's all bullshit. But as long as you, around that interview, you're just like, hey, I'm with you. Solidarity, brother. No one cares. Because you're saying you're playing along. You're putting on the airs. And that's all it is. They just demand you put the airs up. And if you don't, get the hell out of here, man. I think part of it comes from them saying, who the hell are you to not feel the social pressure we do? I do think a lot of it comes from that. Who the hell are you to think you can get away with just not putting pronouns in your bio? I don't think I should either, but I just have to. So who do you to think you can get away with it? I think a lot of it comes down to that. I really do. I feel like people are always too cowardly to say what they mean, so they don't mean what they say either. They end up just kind of, they just project their feelings. Because you can tell when someone isn't. When someone's putting their name on it and saying it with their chest, you can tell, man. It's like obvious when someone's legitimately saying something they believe in and feel and think, and when someone's just saying what you gotta say. That's like one of my favorite things is this you'll hear people say a lot, like, read the room. Dude, read the room is literally you would shut up if you knew it was good for you. That's all read the room means, is shut your damn mouth, idiot. You're not allowed to speak like that here. It's like if you knew what was good for you, you keep your mouth shut right now. And it's because people feel that way. That's why they police it so ardently. It's because they feel that pressure too. And instead of just having that pressure inward on them, they push it back out on others. They make sure other people have to live by the same pressure they live by. And it helps the people that want to create this system of heartless, evil people. It reinforces it. It builds that up even more. Every single person is standing there, shield and spear ready. Say the words. Say the words. You know what I mean? And everyone's like, I don't really want to either, but hey, say the words, say the words, say the words. You know, you start banging your shields, and then even though you don't want to charge the enemy and throw a spear through their head, you and all the boys are banging your shields on your spears, and you work yourself up. You're like, hell yeah, let's go do this. Even though you would much rather not be fighting people right now, but you feel this pressure to fight. I mean, do you know why young men make like young men, not like guys in their mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, like 18, 19, 20, 21. It's like what they love for soldiers. It's because young men, boys really, they're very susceptible to peer pressure, especially around the concepts of like being brave. So it's very easy to get young men to risk their life in a way older men won't by just peer pressuring them into wanting to be brave and be one of the boys and get in there and do their bit. That doesn't work in guys in their 30s, dude. Like, I got fucking kids and shit. What do you mean just be brave? Like, if we're going to die, no. But when you're a kid, it works. When you're 19, you're like, well, I don't want to be the one everyone makes fun of. I'm going to do my bit. And I just see a lot of the same stuff. And again, it feels like a lot of these battlefields are just moved to the internet. Like human beings have been trying to find ways to win wars without killing people for forever. And I think we're there now. We're able to fight wars every single day without killing anyone. Closest you get to dying is being banned. They just ban you on the platform. But that's not only how military recruitment works, dude. That's how colleges recruit kids. How many kids took on bad college loans just because they didn't want to be left out? They didn't want to be the only one not getting drunk in a dorm room with the boys or joining a sorority with the girls. They didn't want to be the one left out. So they're like, even though I don't really want to go to college for anything right now, I guess I'll just take a loan and go. It's how you get people to do things. People that manipulate people, you'll notice they always press on your things you're insecure about, things you're weak on. No one ever tries to manipulate you with what you're strong on. No one ever tries to find your strongest basic principle and manipulate that. No, they try to find where are you weak, where can I exploit you, and then that's what they manipulate. And I would say, just looking around at Americans right now, self-image is something you can exploit in every American. You can convince almost every American they aren't X enough. You're not pure enough. You're not good enough. You're not noble enough. You don't believe in this enough. Hey, advertisers, dude, you ever realize how much high fashion advertisements are just someone doing something cool and the slogan will just be what kind of life do you want? Literally trying to say, hey, loser, don't you wish you were cool like this? Because they know you're too weak to look at that and say, fuck off, dude. I don't want to be some idiot in a billboard. My life's cool. They want you to go, yeah, my life sucks. That is cool. I want that. That's what they want. There's that. But see, that's the thing, and this is my belief. I think a lot of people do this thing. It's only natural, where you kind of just map there's things that human beings struggle with and human beings' weaknesses and all that stuff, right? And it's really easy to just be this human problem that's a weakness of man is actually a fault of the church. It's actually a fault of communism. It's actually a fault of capitalism. It's actually a fault of Islam. Where I think different institutions and the way they run will bring out more of some bad than others. But a lot of the time, man, turning people into products is there anyways. It happens in communism too, I'm sure. I mean, don't live in communism, but you see, like it can happen anywhere. Like this idea that like we like to just be like, oh, it's because the system's broken. It's like, but dude, who made the systems? Where do they come from? How, like, who is standing there with a bayonet in a shirt that says capitalism enforcing it? If everyone just decided to basically use the parts of capitalism they like and ignore the parts they don't like, there's no like capitalist weight that falls on us. Same with communism, right? Same with socialism, same with Christianity, same with Catholicism, same with Scientology, right? Like, actually, I guess in religions there actually is kind of a force. You can't see it, but there is something that would push back on you. But it's just a lot of this stuff we're never going to be able to run away from, man. We can run as far as we want. We can come up with every system we can possibly think of to come up with. We can think of every rule in the book. We can have every single like government position that's designed to prevent the bad thing. All of it could be in place, and we're going to be stuck living as men, as humans, like man-human, right? We're going to be stuck living as human beings with the same flaws and the same faults. No matter how hard we try to big brain ourselves out of being humans, it's never going to happen. And goddamn, are we going to try as hard as we can to big brain ourselves out of this. And you can't, dude. You have to learn to accept what human beings are. Most people don't. And when I say people, I mean like most people, groups don't, never do. Individuals all over the place do, obviously, but like groups on the whole, a lot of the times, man, they're never able to admit, you know what? We're gonna have to accept when we screw up, accept what's gonna happen, and it's because we're weak, flawed humans. It's actually one of the things that scares me a little bit about political faiths more than religious faiths, right? Because in a religious faith, you're playing around with the supernatural a little bit, so it's a little bit, right? But for example, there could be a flood, and the flood could kill a lot of people, right? And people could say, well, how could God let the flood kill all these people? And then some religious people will say, well, we don't know what God knows. We don't know why God sent the flood. And we don't know who God did protect from the flood, right? Like there's greater forces at play here, right? Well, when you have a political faith and you say, why didn't the government stop the flood? There's no one to say, well, like it's just, why didn't the government stop the flood? And if the answer is they didn't know it was coming, why didn't they know it was coming? Well, I mean, you can't predict everything. We can't prepare. We can't be ready for things to happen. Again, when it's God that sent the flood that you're upset about, you can kind of say, well, it's God. Like, what the hell are we going to do? Like, he sent the flood. Like, obviously he knows more than we do. But when it's, why didn't the government prepare better? Why weren't they aware? Why weren't they ready? It's different. And also, here's the thing. It's like, it's a lot easier for you to know damn well your state failed you. Whatever religious faith you believe in failed you, and it's incongruent with life, and it doesn't work. You can see it. With faith, dude, there's always that spiritual layer, that Holy Ghost or whatever. That's something else where you could just be like, oh, I don't know, man. But when it's like, no, none of that shit's involved, dude, and it's just like it's right in front of you, the government you put your faith in didn't do its job, and people are dying. There's no, well, maybe the government knows better. Maybe the government's plan. There's none of that. You have to just accept the fact the thing you believed in is failing you in front of your eyes. With religion, you don't really have to as much, because there's always that spiritual kind of intangible angle that you can keep your faith in. When the government's failed you, what do you have your faith in anymore? The thing you believed in just blew up in front of your eyes. And it's like, you think about, again, like a religious faith and a political faith. And in religious faith, if the actual religious leaders, like the priests, the monks, the bishops, the cardinals, if they're flawed and they're weak and they're cruel and they're wicked and they're evil, it still doesn't get in the way of the fact that there's a God force or a religious force. Even if you're polytheistic, the gods, right? It doesn't get in the way of that. But when you believe in a political faith, if the politicians are weak and flawed and corrupt and ruining it, I mean, they're the damn system. I mean, sometimes people are able to sell themselves on that, oh, maybe this government system could still work. We just have to get rid of the people. But it's a lot harder to sell yourself on that because it's like, but how'd they get there? Who voted for them? Why are they in power? What did they say to get there? It's a lot harder because there isn't any more kind of like intangible aspects of it. It's a very tangible issue now. And human beings don't like to admit they've been misled and lied to, and they believed in charlatans and frauds. They'd much rather just keep believing the charlatan and fraud. Because that's the other thing, dude. When you've been fed a lie, it's like you can either confront that you believed in a lie and all the dominoes that fall because you believed in that lie, or you could just keep living the way you've been living the whole time. What are you going to choose? Except that you put your faith in the wrong system and it causes misery. And then even though you think it'll make good things happen, it never does. Is it easier to do that or just keep on believing what you always believed? Seriously, it's like reassess the way you view everything or do nothing. Well, I wonder if people are going to choose. I wonder if they're going to choose do nothing. Which the people do. They just do nothing. They just keep going along with it. They just convince themselves, yeah, I don't know, it'll help, I guess. It's like, but what why? Like, and the weird thing is that too, the thing that's kind of, like, dude, I don't follow any religious faith. I sure as hell don't follow any fucking political faiths, man. Like, I don't believe in any political faith. I think they're all a bit misguided. Doesn't mean I don't pay attention to governments and how they run. No, but it's like, for example, it's like, it'd be like, to use another football example, right? It'd be like saying that, like, I fully have my faith in the 3-4 defense. Even if it doesn't work in the rules currently, even if I don't have the personnel to run it, I just spiritually believe in the 3-4 defense. Like, there, by the way, is a thing that happens. And it's just like, but dude, why? It isn't working. You need different players to make it work. The way the game's rules are set up, it's not as good as it used to be. Like, why don't you just do something that works? It's like, well, I made my career in a 3-4. I believe in the 3-4. I've been teaching kids to run the 3-4 for 20 years. It's like, yeah, but who cares? You don't have the players to win with it. The rule books doesn't benefit it anymore. Why? That's kind of what I feel like with some of these political faiths, you know? It's like Tucker Carlson said, I thought it was hilarious. People hate Tucker. Tucker's probably one of the stronger critics of capitalism on the right, but he has a great thing where he's like, we made capitalism. Like, there's no reality where we have to just be crushed by the wave of capitalism. We can adjust it to work our way if we want. It isn't a god. It's literally just a set of ideas we can change whenever we want to better serve us. We don't have to say, well, you know, I mean, capitalism knows best, man. I guess the capitalism is it just knows things have to be this way. Like, we're able to say, fuck that, dude, change it. Which, by the way, in a lot of ways we do. Like, we don't have like a strictly capitalist system here. It's the same way you'll notice a lot of like socialist systems, like what is it? A lot of like the European countries people point to as like socialist European countries. It's like, well, they have some socialist angles, but they're not like just 1,000% full-on socialist. They're almost all capitalist countries that have just infused more more social programs, social safety nets, social welfare stuff into it, because they realize we don't have to just like be crushed by a wave of capitalism. We could just replace the parts we don't like with stuff we like better. And you could say at that point it's not even capitalism, which is like, exactly, who cares? Who cares what it's called? Who cares if it's technically a 3-4 defense or not? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, run the one that gets us wins. Run the defense that gets stops. Not the one that's technically the most true to the system. Like, who gives a shit about what that is? But I feel like economically and in just political faith, people do that. People are like, no, we must adhere to the system. It's like, forget the system, dude. If there's parts of capitalism that suck, replace them. Which is, by the way, a lot of people who point to the socialist European countries, that's all they did. They just looked at capitalism and said, well, why don't we replace this with that? Oh, we like that better. But again, like people dig in and defend capitalism, or they dig in and defend socialism. They don't say, well, why don't we just grab the good parts of them? That's a good point. Yeah, capitalism is very, very vague in that way. But yeah, but just the idea of, let's even be just more specific, right? Like just kind of like free trade style of governments, where it's like the government's not going to get in the middle of people trading goods. And like you could even go like crazy libertarian. Like you can go all the way to like Domino's death squads killing Pizza Hut delivery drivers to ensure Domino's, market share. You know what I mean? Like you can go all the way to that end of it, I guess. But there's no reason to like go full bore ideological pure with like economic systems, man. It makes no sense. Again, like it's like, to me, it's like the same thing as being like a NFL coach, like refusing to put a guy in at middle linebacker because it's like he feels like a safety to me. It's like, who cares what he feels like to you, dude? Put him where he'll help us win. And they'll just think like, it feels like we should have the government run this way. It's like, who cares, dude? Like, what works? What isn't? Why don't we audit what's working and audit what isn't and replace them? Oh, trust me, I'm far from, I think globalism is a disaster because human beings do have cultural differences and it's just incongruent with like a global system. You know what I mean? For example, the English and the French, I think, still make fun of each other and aren't necessarily best of friends. They were allies in World War I and World War II, and the French are getting ready to steal the British's fish from off the coast of England again. The sense that like two countries that have like invaded each other back and forth over and over again for like hundreds of years are still this close to being at each other's throats. The idea that we can grab people from all over the world and kind of put them under it's foolish, man. It's foolish. No, it's never going to work. But arrogant men will not take no for an answer and will just insist it can work. The Klaus Schwabs of the world are going to just insist that their global system will work, even though it obviously, judging by the fact that countries have just gone to war with each other for over and over again for thousands of years and never built a giant there's no, for example, you want to think of like some of the like global regimes. What was Alexander the Great a globalist? Right? Was Napoleon a globalist? They all wanted to basically have the whole globe under one rule. Were they globalists? Because in a way, you can look at globalist as just global domination. Again, it's like I said, the Germans don't have to invade France if they can just convince the French people to give their power to Germany, right? Like, what's the point of invading these countries if you could just convince them you should be in charge of them? Like, what would the war even be over? You would just be killing people that could be working for you. But, I don't know, man. That's not how everyone sees it, I guess. So, there we go. So, there's the top of the hour. I'll let it run a few more minutes. I'm going to head off with that. Any last questions? Throw any last questions you guys have in. But either way, anyone, thank you guys all for hanging out with me. Like I said, I really just do this because I like hanging out with you guys, talking with you guys, and kind of it's a fun thing for me to do right now. So I appreciate you guys all for hanging out and listening. But yeah, I mean, seriously though, I never really put it in those words, but like, yeah, like, isn't anybody that wants to take over the world a globalist? You know, if globalism was just this idea of like having like one kind of centralized structured main government that kind of like, you know, like maintains a global social cohesion and order, that's what people who want to take over the world have always said. Like, there's literally, for hundreds of years, they've been writing stories about supervillains that want to, like, kill half of the universe. Wasn't Thanos a global? Thanos was like a galaxy, a universalist, right? Thanos wanted one structured central entity to basically control life for everything. Right? It's basically the same principle. It's I know better, or we know better. That's basically the principle. It's the we know better principle. We deserve what you have. It's that principle. And I mean, I don't like it, but what are you gonna do? Huh? They're gonna evil as a way of, influencing people, I guess you could say. Dude, Napoleon was simply trying to lower barriers to people interacting with each other across the globe. And he was gonna do that by uniting them all under the French Empire. Right? Alexander the Great, all he was trying to do was lower barriers to people interact with each other across the globe, and he wanted to unite them all into the Macedonian Empire. I mean, a little bit less of the empire, but like Napoleon, like that more or less is what Napoleon wanted to do, man. He more or less wanted to take over the world, and he was going to start with Western Europe and then branch off from there, and create better systems, better economies, better ways of everything. But that's like what all mad people that want to take over the world. Like, dude, there's very few people that want to take over the world, and like their internal logic for wanting to take over the world is I'm evil and hate people. Their internal logic is generally I can help them. I know better. I'm the one who could fix things. That's generally the logic in their head, dude. It's not just ha 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 evil. It's not like they're not Palpatine, unlimited power. Like for the most part, they're kind of just like, nah, dude, I think I could fix it. I think I could turn this around. I think I know better than them. I think they're wasting their time. They're wasting their lives. I could go over there and help enlighten them to a better life. That's generally where this stuff comes from. And the thing is, the problem is, once we defeat those people, we then just insist they were just evil. They were just evil incarnate, and all they wanted was suffering. When in reality, they generally had their own really weird, crazy worldviews that informed them, Dude, no offense, Alex, but saying I want this planet to liberate itself from the weak, cruel nations that have imprisoned liberate itself from the belief systems and the languages and the politicians and the religious institutions that have held these people down for too long. I want them to liberate themselves from these shackles and rise up to that's basically a supervillain speech, dude. And again, I'm not saying you're a supervillain. I'm just saying, like, you see how, like, that line of thinking, once it gets perverted a little bit at some level, really does lead to just being what we call evil. No, I don't think it's evil. A lot of these people do legitimately think that they're the ones that are going to, again, that's a great way of phrasing it. A lot of these people do look at it that way. I want to help these countries take over their governments, free themselves from these weak, cruel people who have imprisoned them. And, like, that's how you get started down some dangerous... Like, because here's the thing, too, is once you've convinced yourself that whatever goal you're pursuing is worth pursuing by any means possible, that this is the only good, and any... Like, in a certain way, dude, like, you can almost start convincing yourself that, like, this thing that I want is so good... It's such a universal plus that anything I do that doesn't further that goal is a disservice to humanity itself. Like when you're that much of an egomaniac, you're actually fancying yourself someone who can conquer the world, like a Napoleon or Alexander or Caesar, right? Like you start thinking in ways of like, oh, like if I don't do it, imagine like the suffering those people will have to go through because I didn't liberate them. There's been very few people in history whose aims legitimately was to just imprison people and cause suffering on them for no reason. Just because I hate them. Like that actually is the minority of conflicts in humanity. It's just not I hate you and want to see you suffer is not actually a great motivating factor. It really isn't. That's why those people tend to lose wars, too, if they ever did try to get into them. Like, you know what's scary though, Zach? Some of those people do believe the idea is coming from gods. But you know what I think is way more dangerous? I think it's way more dangerous the people who don't believe in gods. People who just believe that they are just... There is no God to choose anyone. I simply will be the one that rises above. That's like the real evil people. Because those are the people who they don't even think there's... They're just gonna force of will. At least when the people that are able to blame it on are the people that... I almost feel like the people that use gods, in a way, they're almost trying to absolve themselves a bit, right? I was chosen by the gods to be this. I didn't just become this because I deserve to be it. I was chosen, right? People who don't believe they were chosen, they just believe they deserve it. They just believe I deserve to be the king of the world. No one chose me. No one ordained me or anointed me. I just deserve to be that person. In a way, that's creepier to me. Those people freak me out, man, where it's just like, the people who have decided they are God are like the dangerous people. Yeah. But yeah, cool. Okay, guys, so that's it. Any last thing? I'll go to 9 with 2 more minutes. I mostly just got to wrap up, get some water, and then also I think I have a little bit of work I have to do. We'll see. It's getting kind of late here, so we'll see if I'll do them or not. I'll be back with another stream on Thursday night. Hopefully, I'll have a video up in between Thursday and now too. Now and Thursday too. It's just a matter of if I can get enough free time to put something together. I was basically going all day so I could do this at 7, and I still probably have some more stuff to do after this. But I think I've been working on one. I've been working on a video on and off for like a week or 2, so I should be able to get that out. But then, yeah, I'm going to do more. I'm definitely going to do some more Yang stuff. The only thing is, like, every time I look at Yang in the mayoral race, he's still winning by a bunch. He's still the only person running with any real name recognition. He's getting good endorsements. Until something big changes about the race, he's winning. Right? So, but, you know, if something crazy happens, something big happens, because it's really he's just kind of like a boring ho-hum front runner right now. He's the one he's doing the interviews. I think he's like, and also like he's flexing his CNN muscles. I think tonight he did a CNN spot. Only person running for mayor in New York City on the Democratic side that can just pick up a phone and get on CNN. That helps. So yeah, he's running away with it. So anyways, hope you guys have a great rest of your week. I will see you on Thursday and might put a video up and see you before then. If I don't, hope you guys have a great weekend as well.